Good morning, Year 4. How are you? Welcome to today's English lesson. Today you're going to be planning your diary entry, and by the end of this session, to be successful, you will be able to put yourself into a character's shoes, so the shoes of Fred. You'll be able to think about the different events that the character, Fred, has been through and which events that you're going to choose to include in your diary. You'll be able to give examples of the different features, including the past tense verbs and the time adverbials that you plan to use in your diary. And finally, you will have planned your own diary entry. So I do have some retrieval questions for you. First of all, I have two sentences here. I have, first of all, an expanded noun phrase, and I have another sentence here. I want you to write these sentences on your page and then write what my mistake is. I've made a mistake in each of these sentences. I may have made two mistakes in one of the sentences. Can you spot them? Pause the video and have a think and write down your answers, please. How did you do? Did you notice my mistake in my number one sentence? I have written an expanded noun phrase. We know it's an expanded noun phrase because we have our determiner, the, followed by our two adjectives, magnificent and glistening, and we have our noun, water. But what is wrong with this expanded noun phrase? What am I missing? That's right, I'm missing my comma in between my two adjectives. We know that when we write an expanded noun phrase, our two adjectives must be separated by a comma. Now, I've forgotten that here, and Year 4, you need to make sure that you're not forgetting yours, because otherwise I might forget mine, and that's not good. You need to remind me. Number 2, what is wrong with this sentence? So let's read it out loud and think, what words do I need to change? I slept until the morning. It felt better when my eyes was closed. Oh, what words are incorrect here? I slept until the morning. That's not right. Slept. No, we don't say slept, do we? What do we say if we're thinking of the past tense? We say slept, don't we? Fantastic. It felt better when my eyes was closed. That's not correct. What should it be? Were. Well done. So you can see here that my first mistake is the comma. My second mistake is these two words. I've made a mistake then. And slept and were are the correct words. So it should say, I slept until the morning. It felt better when my eyes were closed. Well done if you spotted both my mistakes there. So today we're really going to be thinking and we're going to be planning our diary. But we need to make sure that we really understand what our diary is going to be focusing on, because we know that there's lots of things that has happened in the text, the Explorer, so far. So we need to make sure that we're only writing about a few things, but in detail. Now, the first thing that you're going to do is when you are planning your diary is you're going to be thinking about your introduction. So thinking about some of the W's. So where, what, why, and who are the W's that we are going to focus on in our introduction to our diary entry. Now, I would like you to think about the following questions. I would like you to think, where were you? What were you doing? Why were you there? And who were you with? Now, this isn't going to be random. You're not going to say, oh, I was in a park. Were you? Where were you? Well done, you were in the rainforest. Now, you are Fred, so you're using the story to give you these answers, aren't you? You can also give these, have these pictures as your clues, as stimulus to help you with your answers. But what I would like you to do is just have a think of these 4 questions. So pause the video now and have a think, please. Off you go. Okay, so let's go through them together and we can have a think about what our ideas are going to be. So first of all, where were you? Well, we know we were in the rainforest. Do you remember which one? The Amazon rainforest. Fantastic. We were in the Amazon rainforest. Now, what were you doing? Well, what we were doing is we were trying to find our way around it at first, because when we write our diary, we're going to write it as if we've just crashed the plane, and we came out of the plane and we don't know where we are. So we actually didn't know where we were at first, but then what were you doing? Well, I don't know about you, Year 4, but if I just crashed from a plane and I'd been stranded in the Amazon rainforest, I would probably have a little wander around, have a walk around, and try and see if I know where anything is, or try and see if I can find anyone. Why were you there? Well, that is asking me what happened for me to get there. What happened to Fred? Why did he end up there? Because something happened. He wasn't supposed to go there. That's right. So what he was supposed to do, he was supposed to go to Manaus in Brazil, wasn't he? But instead, the pilot, the man who was driving the plane, had one job and he couldn't get them there safely. For some reason, the pilot had a funny turn and he actually did unfortunately die, which meant the plane was no longer being controlled, so it crashed. And then Fred, you, ended up in the Amazon rainforest. But who were you with at the time? Before you even met anyone, who was it? That's right, it was just you by yourself, wasn't it? Until you met Con, Max, and Lila. So those 4 questions are going to frame your introduction. So I want you to be really thinking carefully, thinking about what happened in the story. Where were you? What were you doing? Why were you there? Who were you with? Okay. Now, the second part to planning our diary is to think of one main event. There's going to be one main event in your diary that is going to be what about 80% of your diary discusses. So the majority of your diary will be talking about this main event. So when you're choosing what your main event's going to be, you need to make sure you really understand it and that you have lots of ideas about it. So I've given you 3 things here that your main event could be, and you'll notice why they're classed as main events in a minute. So the first main event could be all about the people that you met. So you could begin to talk about how you came across Con, and then how you later came across Lila and Max, the brother and sister, what you did with these people. So you first made a den, what type of people they were. So the personalities of Max and Lila and Con. So it's all about now how confident you feel with what you know about the characters in the story, because that would be around about 2 paragraphs of what you're going to be talking about. Another main event could be the things that you did. So all of these statements, these questions so far, are called umbrella terms. They are statements that actually you can get lots and lots of ideas from them. So in terms of the things that you did, think about what you did in the rainforest as Fred. So you made a den, you made a raft, you found some food and you cooked that food, you made a fire, you did lots and lots of things. So that could be an event that you really want to talk about, because there's lots of things that you did. There's lots for you to talk about. And the final main event is how you survived. So what do we need for survival? Well, we need shelter, we need food, we need water. So think about how Fred survived. What did he do? Well, what he did, he made these leaves for the roof. He found a den and he went in the den and stayed there with the other children too. He found some grubs and some cocoa beans and made a fire and started cooking them on the fire so he could make some pancakes. Now, do you notice that some of these ideas overlap between the main events? And that's okay, because you're only going to choose one main event to talk about. So I want you to think now, well, what do I feel most confident on? Do I feel most confident on talking about the people, the things that Fred did, or you did, or how you survived? What do you feel most confident about? Pause the video here and have a think. Okay, so hopefully you've got in your mind now the main event that you want to choose. Either of those 3 would be fine, okay? I think there's not really many others that we can probably choose at this moment, because these all tie into all the experiences that you, as Fred, have had so far. Now, we do have the main events, but after we've spoke about the main event, we also have the little events to talk about too. Now, there's not going to be many, so I've given you a large selection here, because there's going to be some other smaller events that you're going to be discussing and talking about in your diary. So you might have your main event as maybe 1 big paragraph or 2 small paragraphs all about either of these 3 things. But then, after you've spoke about that, you might go on to say the next things that have happened to you. Now, I've came up with a list of small events that have happened in the story The Explorer so far. Now, first, I've said you made a fire. I've said you went foraging. Who remembers what that word means? That's right, hunting for food. You climbed a tree. You made pancakes. You made a roof for the den. You met some animals and you came across some plants. Now, these are lots and lots of things that have happened in the story. I don't have all the details here. You might remember some small events that I haven't included in my list. And I definitely wouldn't include all of the events. I would probably include 2 more events, okay? But these have to be events that I wouldn't have spoken about in my main event. But also, I need to think what order these events happened. I can't just say I made a fire yesterday, today I went foraging, oh, last week I climbed a tree. They need to be in order. So I might have said, oh, later this afternoon, or maybe earlier this morning, I made a fire. And then I decided that I wanted to go foraging because I needed some more food. Whilst I was there, I saw a massive beehive and I met these monkeys, and then you can start to talk about how you climbed a tree. And that's how you add those 3 small events in there. So I want you to have a second and just think, are there any small events that Miss Newman hasn't included here and that maybe I can include in my diary plan? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, you might have thought of lots of them. So another thing that we need to make sure that we are using are both first person pronouns and the past tense verbs. Now, the first person pronouns are going to be the same for everyone because we will all be using the first person pronouns I, my, we, or our. We are not going to use she. We're not going to say she did this unless we're talking about Lila, but we're not going to say she as in ourself. We're not going to say you as in you went to the woods because it's I went to the woods, for example. So we're all going to be using the same first person pronouns. So these will be the same ones that everyone has in their plan. But the past tense verbs are going to be different for everyone. Now you will see on the sheet that I've provided in your resource pack that there are different, there is a section for past tense verbs that you are going to be including in your diary. And when you are including these in your plan, I want you to think, well, what would I be doing in the rainforest? And I would say I would sleep. So I've said slept would be a past tense verb. I would eat, so ate would be a past tense verb. I would walk, I would run. I might stumble if I trip over something. I might drink, and also I know that I am going to meet people too. So I'm thinking, well, what am I doing in the rainforest as Fred? And I've turned all of these things that I'm doing into past tense verbs. I've got some more examples here as well, because I know that I was climbing, searching for things. I was climbing a tree, I was searching, I was foraging. I know that I might hear some sounds. So I could say that I heard sounds, I climbed the tree, I searched for this, I searched for that. But also the past tense verbs was and were. I was sleeping when I heard a. We were going out of the clearing to try and get some more food, for example. So I want you to just have a second and think, what is Fred, your Fred, as in you, going to do in the rainforest? What actions are you going to do? Because we don't want the same ones as me. You want to have different verbs than me because you want to include different verbs so that you have a different diary. So can you have a think, well, what past tense verbs are you going to use? What will you be doing? Pause the video here and can you make a list of 3 past tense verbs that you're going to be using, please? Pause the video now and have a go. Okay, hopefully you thought of some different past tense verbs. There are thousands of past tense verbs out there. Anything that you want to do, like an action, can be turned into a past tense verb. And the final things that we're going to look at as part of our plan today were, how could you show how you were feeling? Now, we could show how we were feeling by using the sentence starters I felt, I thought, I was. And when you are writing your diary plan today, you are actually going to give some ideas of how you were feeling. So this is where you really put yourself into the shoes of Fred and think, well, how would I feel in the rainforest? Might I have felt scared? Abandoned? I might have thought that I would never come home. Maybe I was really horrified by what I saw. So these are all ways to get our feelings in. Now, I am going to make a part 2, but it's really, really important that you go to this part 2 of this video now, because that tells you all about your task for today, and so that you can create a really effective diary entry plan. Okay, so I'll see you in part 2.